President Trump's war of words with his one-time FBI chief shows no sign of stopping tonight. The president is ripping former acting bureau director Andrew McCabe and may inadvertently help the man he fired sell more books. We've seen that before. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts has details from the North Lawn. Good evening, John.
Brett, good evening to you. And that escalating war of words between President Trump and Andrew McCabe has again refocused attention on the Russia investigation, as we are getting indications that the special counsel Robert Mueller may be about to submit his report. In the Oval Office today, meeting with Austria's Chancellor, President Trump, with harsh words for his former acting FBI director.
Well, I think Andrew McCabe has made a fool out of himself over the last couple of days, and he really looks to me like sort of a poor man's J. Edgar Hoover. I think he's a disaster.
In interviews to sell his book, Andrew McCabe continues to insist President Trump could be a Russian asset. But he acknowledges that all of the information that caused him to launch the investigation is already in the public domain.
I'm not so sure that there are things that haven't been made public.
President Trump reminded today that McCabe was fired from the FBI after an inspector general report found he misled investigators.
Anybody reading the IG report would say, how could a man like this be involved with the FBI?
The presidential criticism aside, McCabe says he is eager to see what the Mueller report has to say about President Trump's possible connections to Russia. While the DOJ will not comment on timing, that report could be coming soon.
That'll be totally up to the new Attorney General. He's a tremendous man, a tremendous person who really respects this country and respects the Justice Department, so that'll be totally up to him.
If that report is released next week, it will come as President Trump is in Vietnam for his second meeting with Kim Jong-un. The president says he is in no rush to push Kim to give up his nuclear program and suggested next week's meeting is just another step along a long path.
I don't think this will be the last meeting by any chance, but I do think that the relationship is very strong.
In President Trump's meetings today with the Austrian Chancellor, a new threat from Russia high on the agenda. In his annual address to the nation, Vladimir Putin threatening to target Europe and the United States with a new generation of hypersonic weapons if the U.S. bases intermediate-range missiles in Europe.
Russia will be forced to create and develop weapons, which can be used not only towards those territories that from which direct threats may be directed at us, but also towards those territories where centers of decision-making in employing rocket systems that are threatening to us.
Putin's threat was in response to President Trump starting the 6-month clock to pull out of the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. John James on the president's shortlist for UN ambassador today insisting Russia needs to be held in check.
Russia is cheating. There are growing spheres of communist influence, and Russia and China are trying to remake the world in their image. This is why it's so important to have somebody to advocate for America, to lead on behalf of the Western civilization.
Vladimir Putin did say today that he is not looking for a confrontation, particularly with the United States, a sign that he may be willing to talk. The Pentagon is working on developing countermeasures to Russia's new weapons, putting together a space-based system to detect and destroy those hypersonic missiles, and also with the plan to equip nuclear submarines with low-yield nuclear weapons as a deterrent to Russia. Brett?
John Roberts, live on the North Lawn. John, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. President, for receiving us here in the U.S. and the White House. It's a pleasure for my delegation and for me to be here. Austria, as you probably know, is compared to the US a very small country, but we are a beautiful country. It's true. We are an economically quite strong country. You would probably say a great country. We are in the heart of the European Union, an active member state of the European Union. As a small country, we need international cooperation, and therefore I hope that we can discuss now our bilateral relations, but also the relations between the European Union and the United States of America, of course, trade, and how we can gain economic growth for the US, but also for Europe, and probably international issues like Middle East, Korea, right, and probably also Russia. Thank you for receiving us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. President, are you going to impose auto tariffs on the Europeans?
Well, it's something we certainly think about. We're trying to make a deal. They're very tough to make a deal with the EU. They've been very difficult over a period of time, over many, many years. And so it's something we think about, and we're negotiating with them. If we don't make the deal, we'll do the
The
tariffs.
new report hasn't changed your mind about it at all? There's a new report from the Commerce Department?
The new report is not that kind of a report. It's just really a study that's underway. We've studied it very carefully. We've seen the results. But the bottom line result is whether or not we can make a deal with the EU that's fair. We lose about $151 billion trading with the EU. That's a lot of money. And this has been going on for many years. They wouldn't meet with the Obama administration. And they're meeting with us. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Mr. President, should the Mueller report be released when you're abroad next week?
That'll be totally up to the new Attorney General. He's a tremendous man, a tremendous person who really respects this country and respects the Justice Department. So that'll be totally up to him, the new Attorney General. Yes.
What do you expect from Austria?
I guess from what I understand, that will be totally up to the Attorney General. Okay?
Mr. President, what do you expect from Austria?
Decriminalize homosexuality. Are you doing that, and why?
Say it.
Your push to decriminalize homosexuality around the world.
I don't know which report you're talking about. We have many reports. Anybody else?
Mr. President, what do you expect from Austria? What do you expect from the Austrian Chancellor to do in European policy?
Well, we're just going to have a great meeting. We have a great relationship, and our countries have a great relationship. And he's a very young leader, I have to tell you. You are a young guy. That's pretty good.
But the problem with the age is getting better from day to day.
That's right. Someday you won't be saying it. But we have a very good relationship, and we have a great trade relationship, and that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about today.
Are you considering replacing Dan Coates as your Director of National Intelligence?
I haven't even thought about it.
Mr. President, you spoke to the Prime Minister of Japan today.
I did.
How hard is it going to be to get North Korea to verifiably denuclearize?
Well, I spoke with, this morning, with Prime Minister Abe. Had a long conversation with him. We talked about the trip next week to Vietnam, which would be, I think, very successful. I think the first trip to Singapore was extremely successful. We'll be meeting with Chairman Kim for 2 days, and I think we'll accomplish a lot. We started off with a very good meeting, and I think we'll continue that along. I don't think this will be the last meeting by any chance, but I do think that the relationship is very strong. When we started, as you know, there were a lot of problems. There was the missiles going all over. There were hostages that were being held. There were remains that we wanted to get back. There were many, many things. Now there's no nuclear testing, no missiles going up, and we have a good relationship, very good relationship, I'd say. So I spoke with Prime Minister Abe of Japan about that, and we compared notes, and I think we are very much on the same wavelength. It was a good meeting, good conversation.
They seem very reluctant, the North Koreans, to denuclearize. You think you'll be able to make
No, I don't think they're reluctant. I think they want to do something, but you know, you've been talking about this for 80 years. They've been talking about this for many, many years, and no administration has done anything. They've gotten taken to the cleaners, and I think we have a really meaningful relationship. We'll see what happens. The sanctions are on in full. As you know, I haven't taken sanctions off. I'd love to be able to, but in order to do that, we have to do something that's meaningful on the other side. But Chairman Kim and I have a very good relationship. I wouldn't be surprised to see something work out. I really believe that as an economic power, because of its location in between, I mean, you look on a map and you see Russia, China, and right in the middle of everything is South Korea, but North Korea right smack in the middle. So you have Russia, China, and then South Korea, and this is right in the middle. Tremendous potential for economic well-being long-term, and I think he understands that very well. I think he might understand that better than anybody. So they have a great, great potential as a country, and I think that's what they're looking to do. We'll see. But we've made a lot of progress. We've made a tremendous amount. That doesn't mean this is going to be the last meeting, because I don't believe it will. But we have subjects to discuss which will be very fruitful, I believe.
Mr. President, can Austria...
On Andrew McCabe briefing McConnell and Paul Ryan and Devin Nunes, telling them about the investigation into you?
Well, I think Andrew McCabe has made a fool out of himself over the last couple of days, and he really looks to me like sort of a poor man's J. Edgar Hoover. He's I think he's a disaster. And what he was trying to do was terrible, and he was caught. I'm very proud to say we caught him. So we'll see what happens, but he is a disgraced man. He was terminated not by me, he was terminated by others. The IG report was a disaster from his standpoint. Anybody reading the IG report would say, how could a man like this be involved with the FBI? And the FBI has some of the greatest people, some of the finest people you'll ever meet, but this man is a complete disaster. Thank you all very much. Thank you. I will be interested.
Thank you.
Attorney General Matthew Whitaker to change the leadership of the investigation into your former personal attorney, Michael Cohen?
No, not at all. I don't know who gave you that. That's more fake news. There's a lot of fake news out there. No, I didn't.
President Trump there denying a New York Times report that he asked former acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker if a U.S. attorney in New York could essentially unrecuse himself from the federal investigation into Michael Cohen. A Justice Department spokesperson also saying Whitaker is standing by his House testimony that the White House never asked for any promises regarding the ongoing investigations. I want to bring in now Andy McCarthy, former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York and a Fox News contributor. Andy, what are we supposed to make of this?
Harris, I think it's a non-story. It's a lot like the big coverage that we've gotten every month or 2 months. They run a story about how Trump vented and he wanted to fire Mueller, but it's all wind and no rain. Nobody ever gets fired. It looks like they're just going to now do the same thing with the Southern District of New York. The issue would be if Trump directed his attorney general to tell the U.S. attorney in New York to ignore his recusal and take over the investigations that impact Trump. The president didn't do that. The former Attorney General Whitaker says it didn't happen. President says it didn't happen. So it's a lot of hullabaloo about nothing. They ought to get back to us when he actually fires somebody.
You know, it's interesting. Of course, everything is politics, but Democrats are looking at this, some of them, as defanging the investigation. If you put somebody alike in certain places, does that change how things go? Democratic Congressman Cicilline of Rhode Island says this. Let's watch.
This reporting is explosive in that it reveals that the president reached out to the acting attorney general in the hopes of changing the leadership of the investigation to put somebody more favorable to him in the leadership of the investigation. That is completely inappropriate. If he did it with the corrupt intent to shut down the investigation or direct it in a certain way, it's clearly obstruction of justice.
Let's watch what the president said, too, in a quick tweet. The New York Times reporting is false. They are a true enemy of the people. Andy, that may not be helpful, but doesn't the New York Times have something to say here in terms of show me the facts?
Yeah, well, you know, look, I think slow news day, Harris, which is unusual in the age of Trump. I guess we should be, we should be somewhat thankful for that. I really think that these stories are going to continue until these investigations are wrapped up. But what I would say to people who are whipped up about this and think it's explosive is that, Trump has ranted and raved about Mueller for nearly 2 years. Mueller has filed, at this point, who knows how many indictments and other charging documents. He hasn't returned a single sentence that suggests that Trump committed any misconduct, and Trump has never fired him, even though he's had the authority to fire him the whole time. So
those are the facts.
Yeah.
I want to get in
facts.
I want to get in the Times response as well, because we've received that. The phrase enemy of the people is not just false, it's dangerous. It has an ugly history of being wielded by dictators and tyrants who sought to control public information, and is particularly reckless coming from someone whose office gives him broad powers to fight or imprison the nation's enemies. Your response?
All right. Give me a ring when Trump tries to close down the Times.
Andy McCarthy, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.